So we are talking about lists. There's actually, and we want to be able to use lists in our draw handler and in creating our ball for our ball program there. There's one other thing I forgot to mention earlier when we were setting up the x, y, and dy dx values for our ball, and that's this idea of pulling out one particular value from the list. So if I'm going to use this, I'm going to change my list in MicroWorlds to be how now brown cow, and if we want to get a particular, so if we show the whole, we can show the whole list. Let's show it again. Now remember, in MicroWorlds, even though it's a list, when it gets displayed without the brackets, the front and back brackets. But what we can do is we can pull out one particular item from the list. So we could say show item 2 of the list, and that's just the word now, because now is the second word in the list. Okay, or if I said, show item 4 from the list, since it's how now brown cow, 1 2 3 4, it's going to be cow. Okay. In Python, the way that works is similar, except there's a little bit of a difference in the numbering scheme. So if you go to I kind of like the way they explain it at if you go to Google Python class. So Google's Python class, and then you can look in under, they have a whole section on lists, and they also have some videos. So here's the section on lists in their Python course, and they kind of show you then how lists are laid out. So if we have a list named colors, it points to this these 3 different items. Okay, so this is, but the first thing that it points to is item 0. Okay, so it's item 0, 1, and 2. So if we have a list colors equal to red, blue, green, and we say print colors 0, that's going to print out the red. If we say print colors 2, that's going to print out the green. So this is item 0, this is item 1, this is item 2. And if you print len, that's the length of the colors list, it's going to tell you it's 3, because there are 3 items in the list. So and we call this, we say 1 is an index into the list, and if you use and the item located at that index is the string blue. Okay, so let's look at Code Sculptor again here. So if we have so here when we make the list be how now brown cow, if we pull out item 1 from that list, this is going to be 0, this is going to be 1, so we're going to pull out the now from the list. So in where we would say item 2 in logo, we use the index 1 in Python. Okay, so let's do that. So yeah, so if I print a list 1, that's now. Oh, also there's they mentioned the len procedure. Let me just in Python or in microworlds, I'm pretty sure it's count. If we say show count of a list, since there's 4 items in the list, it should say 4. Yeah. So there's this idea of a count reporter in microworlds. So if we said show count a list, it prints out 4. Okay, but in Python, the way we do that is we say print the length of a list, and that'll tell you, and that should give us, well, let's put an extra print for a space down here, and that'll tell you it's 4. Okay, so and I'll tell you where you can look up some more stuff at the end here, but I just want to get through some of these other things. So let's see, what else do we need? The other thing I think we need is, so we want to be able to loop through our list of, so eventually we're going to have a list of balls, okay? Instead of ball 1, ball 2, ball 3, we'll have a list of balls, and we want to be able to loop through them and do something different for each one. So like we'll be able to say for ball in balls, well then do something with each ball, right? To update it or draw it or whatever. The other thing we need to do is we want to be able to create our list of balls in the beginning. So it'd be nice if we could just say, well, this is how many we want to create, and then just generate that many. So there's this other kind of do loop that you can do in microworlds called do times. So let's take a look at that. So we have do times, and again we have this variable I, but instead of a list as the second part of this, so we have, so just like do list, do times has 2 inputs, right? It has this front piece, and then it has this instruction list, which you do every time for a different value of I. But this time, instead of I taking on different values in the list, I takes on the values 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? And each time it'll do this with I equal to 0, then it'll do that with I equal to 1, then with I equal to 2, and then with I equal to 3. Okay? So we're saying show SE, and then SE makes a list out of these 2 inputs here. Okay. So we're saying, show SEI and the square root of I. So we're gonna let's just run it. So we have 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. 1 and the square root of 1 is 1. 2, the square root of 2 is 1.14, etc., etc. And notice it doesn't go on forever because we don't have an infinite amount of space in the computer. So it has to end someplace. So they kind of just decided this is where we're going to chop off the square root of 2. And the same thing with the square root of 3, right? Or we could have done something like I times I, right? To get the squares. And that gives us 0, 1, 4, 9. So 0 is, the square of 0 is 0, 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, like that. Okay? So the way that we do something like that in Python is with this for loop here. So we have, I'm going to stick in the, I like to stick these extra print things in just because it gives me an extra space over here. So I'm because when these are all munged together, it's hard for me to tell, where I got them from. So here we're going to go for I in range 4. And the same thing's going to happen. I is going to get the values 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? And we're going to do I. And notice that square root in Python is part of belongs to a special library, to a module called math. So we have to say import math. Just like we had to say import simple GUI in order to use the functions from the simple GUI module. Square root is one of those modules that you have to import math and then say math.square root. So let's do that. That's the same kind of deal that we had before. Or we could have said print I and then print I times I to do the squares, right? Okay, so that's going to give us just about everything you need. Well, the only thing I should probably mention at this point is what this range thing really is, and that's so range is actually a function that returns a list. So I'll show you. So for range 6, that returns the list 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it returns a list that has 6 items in it, starting with 0 and then going up to, in this case, since range is 6, it goes up to 5, it goes up to 1 less. So if we said range 4, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3. So there are 4 items in the list, but it starts with 0, so it only goes up to 3. Okay, so yeah, so I think that'll be enough to get us to be able to build what we need to in the ball class. There's a lot more to lists, and you can look it up in the docs here. There's a whole section on lists and a ton of different things you can do with them. There's links to the Python tutorial on lists, and also, like I said, I like this the list stuff that they have in the Google class, and there's also video lectures on that if you want to look at that. But I think we'll leave off lists for the time being and go back and apply lists to our ball project.